Hello and welcome to Property Question Time. This is the programme where you can have your property related questions answered by our team of property experts. I'm Stephen Galpin and joining me today are Stefano Lucatello, Senior Partner of Cobalt Law, international lawyer, author, and I won't forget, celebrity chef.
Thank you, Stephen. Hello there.
Hi. Next to you is Thomas Balashev, founder of Montague Property International. Welcome back, Tom. And John Howard, property developer, public speaker and author from Ipswich.
That's great. Thank you for promoting Ipswich.
Well, you keep telling me off being too London-centric, so I thought we'd give Ipswich a bit of a plug today.
I'm jealous. I want you to plug Hull, please, next
Right, okay. Well, save that for next time, Stefano. Stefano, we're going to you for the first question. I have under construction in the north of Italy an apartment in a block of 20 units. Progress has been very slow, and the agent I used, who was supposed to be monitoring the progress, has gone out of business. I've been to the notary who completed the paperwork, but they say the construction process is not within their control or understanding. What can I do?
Very little. Because it's correct. The notaio is only there to transfer title of whatever you've bought. So you will have bought something off plan, and you'll have bought it with a series of stage payments in it, identified in the documentation. And I think this is where you need to go back to your contract and see what the contract says. The devil is in the details, Stephen, as you know, that if you get the contract wrong by not putting something in or by putting something in that's against you, it's not helpful to you. So you need to stop when you buy off plan. I'm sure Thomas will say the same thing, and look at the development contract, because it's not only, for example, the flat that you're having built or the villa you're having built in the development, it's everything else, such as the swimming pool and the common parts, the communal areas. Because as Thomas will know, when most people buy off plan, they buy usually for rental purposes, not for themselves, but for an investment, and then to derive a return on investment. Many of these things that don't happen because people don't look at the bigger picture. They don't look and see that the swimming pool's been made, completed, and all the rest of it. So they can't rent out to a family who has got 2 kids and want a swimming pool because the swimming pool's not been made. But returning to this question, there is very little you can do. All you can do is go back to the contract and see if there is, for example, a force majeure clause in. Force majeure clause is where the builder or the developer exercises a right to extend the period of time within which he's building whatever he's building, the development or the flat or whatever, and he says that usually it's 180 days, and only after 180 days can you then do something about it. So I would go back to the contract, have a look at the contract, see if the contract can help you in any way, shape or form. If not, the fact that the agent's gone out of business isn't a problem, I don't think, really, because agents usually are only a means of communication. You can do that communication yourself. So go back to the developer and just see what he says.
Having said that, Stefano, I know in Italy in particular, the agents are on quite high percentages, aren't they? And they're also probably going to get paid by both sides, aren't they?
They always get paid by both sides, absolutely. The range of commission goes from 6% to 10%.
Right. Is that each? From each?
No, it's a total. No, it's either 6% or 10%. It's 3% or 5% from each party.
Okay, right. Because that's quite a hefty chunk of your investment, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And it depends also what obligations the agent had. But that's not for you to. That won't be a contract between you and him. The contract, if there was one, will be between the developer and the agent as to what services that agent was going to provide to the developer.
Well, I want to take advantage of sort of Tom's geographically wider experience of that, going out of Europe and again into perhaps Dubai and similar sort of very hot areas. What would be the situation there if that kind of situation
Well, I mean,
arose?
I'll use Cyprus as an example because it's in the Med. It's probably an easier comparison. It's quite a sad story, to be honest. You hear this a lot where people go, and I think that's the frustrating thing, is that people get then off-put about investing and doing stuff overseas. Because they hear stories like that. So to put it in perspective to anyone else that's listening, that isn't the norm. That's quite a rare situation for that to happen. But when it does, I think you've got to do what Stefano says, and you've got to look through how you're protected contractually, because where you can begin to get support from government and solicitors, lawyers, that type of thing, is when the contract is enforceable in your favour. If it's enforceable against you, assume that it will be, and if it's not, then you can put all of your weight behind that to make sure you get the result. But they need to think about, what do they want? What are they going to try and ask the developer to hurry up? It's going to be quite difficult to enforce anything apart from, I think, maybe a dose of patience, and just see how maybe the next 3 to 6 months go. Get in the apartment and just use it as an experience.
Okay. And John, you're going to tell us that this is a very good reason to invest in Ipswich, aren't you?
Certainly, it's a great reason to invest in the UK. Some beautiful places in this country, and you don't pay 6 to 10% commission.
Well, I think the other thing is, you know,
Not as sunny.
No, not quite as sunny, although it's beautiful outside today.
Yeah.
I think one of the things here to remember is this is why London real estate and UK real estate in general is so attractive, because we have some of the best secure property legislation in the world, don't we? And this is what, of course, attracts people.
Yeah.
But,
It's security.
The one thing you should do if you're buying off plan, and I've said this many, many times, is to check out the developer. Check out his or hers or theirs antecedents. Have they been in business a long time? Do they trade through a company? Is it an
Look at what else they've done. It's a good one.
Is it
Track
an
record,
individual
really
track
important.
record?
Yeah.
Go on the forums. You go on the internet now. There's a forum for everything.
Yeah.
So you will find someone who's disgruntled with this particular person or entity, and find out. Do a bit of research.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's your money. You're outlaying money in stage payments.
yeah, good idea. Yeah, excellent.
Just to add on to that, just to give that person confidence, as a company, we're in a similar position where we would be investing capital into that type of project. The only difference being is that we would really focus on the track record of the developer, because we're not alien to that happening to us as a business. The only difference being is we wouldn't use a developer that hadn't done that 1,000 times before.
So the same criteria applies then, doesn't it? Whether you're private
Absolutely.
or whether it's industrial, yeah. Okay, Tom, we're going to move on to your question. Now, I know this is a little bit out of your normal sphere of specialty, but it is relative to, I think, where you operate from in Mayfair, and it's typical of a lot of London areas where leasehold is the norm. And it's this: having purchased my property, a flat in Mayfair, and some 4 years ago, I'm feeling very sad and lonely after the death of my husband. I think the solution would be to have a pet, perhaps a small dog. However, my lease says no pets. I have written to the managing agents asking them for consent, but they say no. This seems awfully unfair. What would happen if I just ignore this clause and take in a small pet?
I think the first thing I would say is ask for forgiveness, not permission. Realistically, it's a very difficult thing to enforce. There would be many, many, many stages ahead of what ultimately is, I imagine, their fear, which is the property falling into some kind of disrepute. But I would just go for it. Just keep it under wraps and make sure the dog doesn't bark at night.
That's interesting.
There is no. I mean, you can't. Whether there is a covenant against having animals or pets or not, you cannot stop a person having an animal if it's for disability purposes. So if that person is either deaf, cannot see, or is what of these other...
I appreciate that, Stefano.
Yeah.
This is somebody who's just feeling
on that subject.
lonely, I think,
I have seen evidence before where the name of it escapes me, where people use animals as companionship to fight depression. And in that situation, which is a very unfortunate thing to hear, there might be some grounds there.
Can I put some realism to this? Would you mind? As a freeholder, if someone says to me, can I have permission for a pet? I say yes, that'll be so much money. So it'll be 2,000, 4,000, 5,000, whatever.
John,
so that's how the world goes around. If you own the freehold of a building, you own it in order to make money. So, for instance, if the lessee has done building work without your permission, and they now want your permission, that costs them money. Now, the alternative is they can go to the land tribunal and see if the land tribunal would accept their excuse, accept their reasoning, and cancel whatever charge we want to make. But ultimately, it's a business. Freeholders own these properties for a business.
John, let me just do this. There are one or two in property TV that think I'm probably a bit ruthless on these sort of issues. Really. But you see, I would say, as a generality, your landlord draws up a lease, he signs it, he gives it to you, you read it.
You've signed it.
You've signed it. So for me, just do what the lease says.
Without question.
It saves a lot of trouble. But unfortunately, we are, a species that has feelings, that has difficulties and has emotional difficulties. So in a case like this, is it so unreasonable? I know the principle is this, that if you allow pets in or you allow other things to go on, you allow one, you've got it running
that's
through
their
the
argument,
building.
probably, to be fair. And everyone says they've got a small pet. How many times have I been told, and as the landlords have been told, oh, they've only got a small pet. You find out it's a damn great Alsatian.
She may want a small pet, but then someone thinks, oh, I'm going to get a Great Dane.
Mine's only that much bigger.
I suggest she puts it on the market, moves to another one, and next time make sure her lawyer checks out whether or not pets are allowed.
I think there is another solution. If it's not too big a block, one of the answers might be to write to the other residents and see what
buy the freehold.
She could have a hamster.
Yeah.
Not only that, she could buy the freehold.
All right. Well, let's move on. John, your question. I'm told that converting an empty shop into a residential dwelling is complicated. The complication will be achieving the necessary fire exit requirements. Essentially, the front shop area would be, by necessity, securely closed off, leaving only one exit path down the rear stairs to a side door of the accommodation on the first and second floors. Is that going to be a problem?
I don't worry about any of that, Stephen, and let me tell you why. Because I've got experts who will sort that out for me. What I'm worried about, before all that, is when I look at the building, is it always going to look like a shop? Because unless you can change the shop window, you've got no front garden, you've got no parking problem.
No, but I think here, I think it looks like the essential shop area at the front, the retail area would be sectioned off, and the rest of the building will be...
So they're retaining the shop. Sorry, I misunderstand.
That's right.
My point is correct, though, on the fact if anyone is looking to buy a shop to convert it to a house, then be very careful. On this occasion, I see what they're saying. Yeah, it may be a problem. But just get an expert in to give you the answer. Don't go worrying about it. Get an expert in, give you the answer. It's either yes or it's a no. If it's a no, move on to another property.
Who would they approach at the local authority?
Certainly, if you want to go cheap and go to local authority and do it for free, you can certainly go to the building inspector. The building inspector would be the one, probably. Environmental health, maybe, would look at it. But certainly building inspector, probably, yeah.
Stefano, your second question. When looking at retiring to perhaps the better climates of Italy, Spain or France from the UK, what will the health arrangements be? I think previously we've had reciprocal arrangements, but presume these will stop post-Brexit.
We have reciprocal arrangements. These will stop after Brexit. Your EHIC card will stop working after 3 months of having left Brexit, and you will... my advice to anyone moving abroad is to have something like an international health program so that you are covered. If not, and it's your intention to live there permanently, whichever country you go to, you will have to contribute into the state system to be able to get out something.
Well, I know we've started that on our visas coming into the UK, haven't we?
Yeah. So usually what happens abroad when you buy a medicine, you will, and you're paying into the system, you'll pay for it, but then you will get some of it back. If you're there as a tourist, you pay for it and that's it. Medicines cost much more abroad than they do here. They're not so much state-sponsored, and it is a big question that you must ask. It's one of the top 5 questions you must ask yourself when you decide it's your intention to move abroad permanently. Whether you've got health insurance, whether that health insurance will cover you abroad, and if not, are you somewhere near a hospital, and will that hospital take you in if you need something substantial doing?
You talked about an international policy. Would you tend to do that in the country that you're moving to?
No.
Rather than perhaps here?
And I do it from the United Kingdom. I won't mention any names, but there are 3 or 4 big ones that you can use. One of them has the word international on the end of it, and you can use those. My advice is to, if you've got it, to keep paying for it. Don't stop paying for it, because as you get older, something will happen. I've had medical insurance all my life. When I went abroad to work in Gibraltar, I then took that medical insurance with me to Gibraltar to cover me if I had any problems. So that's what I would advise people to do.
And I suppose ideally, you can just run it for the first couple of years that you're there while you get to grips with understanding the system. More,
Absolutely, yes. I mean, if you feel that after 2 or 3 years you are getting the same, if not better, level of health care by paying something into it, then do that.
Tom, what's your advice to your international clients?
A lot of the clients that we deal with look to domicile there for citizenship purposes, so they get the same rights when they're in that country. So, for example, Cyprus, if they move there, Cyprus has a very, very good healthcare system. If they move to Cyprus and gain a citizenship, they have no issue with this type of thing. But I agree. I think it's a great question that not enough people ask when they're moving away. They've already made the decision, they've invested, they've bought the property, and then they think, oh.
As an afterthought, almost.
Yeah, but you should really, whenever you're buying anything overseas or any big transaction, you should make a thorough list and make sure you think of every eventuality. But insurance seems like it's expensive, but it's only expensive until you need it.
John, I mean, any complications moving to Ipswich? Or?
No, everyone is welcome. What I would say though, if you come back from abroad, will you then be able to get
if you've already got citizenship?
Say you go and live in abroad and then decide you're not well, but you want the operation done in England. Will you still be able to come back? And presumably you will.
Even
if you're a citizen now in the other country.
Yes. Well, remember, like in the same way, if you go abroad for more than 15 years, you can't vote in the United Kingdom.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So you're disenfranchised after 15 years. So you have to be very, very careful. My view is this: if you can and you're in the position to do so, always leave a pied-à-terre in the United Kingdom here.
One foot in the country.
Absolutely, one foot in the country, and keep your registration with your doctor and all the rest of it. You know, if you've got children that can take on the house, give it to them, let them take over the house, but you keep that as your. And
this boils down to having the correct expert team around you before you make it.
It's the same old story, isn't it? Surround yourself with good quality advice.
Okay, Tom, your question. I have an apartment in central London and I wish to rent it out, possibly on short-term lets, to one of the leading hotel letting companies. However, I've been told that I'm not allowed to let my flat on a daily basis and that if I do, I could incur a significant fine from the local authority. Is this correct? And if so, why is that? It's my flat, so surely I can allow whoever I like to stay there. I really don't understand the purpose of this regulation, if in fact it exists. Well, I think we probably all know the company this refers to.
Absolutely. So am I right in saying that they want to do that full time every single day of the week?
Well, it looks like they're looking at it as a sort of investment vehicle, doesn't it?
I think my first question would be: is there a market to have that let every single week? I mean, I think we all know the company. I wouldn't be so confident that would be executed 365 days. So the first point is, if it's not executed 365 days, then technically speaking, you could probably get around it to somewhat, depending on how much it was let for. But
well, I know in Tower Hamlets here, I know when the Olympics were on in 2017, they got very, very hot about short-term lets, and they were threatening, I think, a £25,000 fine for doing short, weekly lets.
I would be more concerned about the freeholder again, because unless the lease says you can do short-term lets, then that's more of an issue, and sublet it's more of an issue. But we have a lawyer here, so.
Well, John, in Stefano, in central London, under 3 months, you do need planning consent.
Absolutely.
yeah.
Right,
Which is
very
interesting. To this very point, when the gentleman or the lady says that it's their flat, well, it is their flat for the term of years that they have it, but it's subject to the terms of the freehold.
Exactly, yes.
So the first thing to do is to read all the covenants. It will say in any covenant, in any lease, it will say that any lease for under 6 months is forbidden. That covers the assured short-haul tenancy agreement side of things. So I used to live in Fulham, in a part of Fulham where my next-door neighbour was a French lady, and she rented her property out every day of the year with this particular company. And I had a different person next door every day of the year, unless they stayed 2 or 3 days, whatever. That brings in with it all sorts of things for security, for cleanliness, and all sorts of the bits and pieces. That people coming and going don't care where they live. They come there for the 2-day period, then they go on and they leave us to pick up the pieces. So it's a problem.
I think you're right. I mean, I'm just looking out of the window here, and there's a particular block down there that I had some involvement with, and letting in there to these short-term letting companies was prevalent. And there were days when you couldn't get in the reception there for people with suitcases, bashing them on the walls and all sorts. And what people don't realise, when they do these short-term lets, the people that are coming in have got no regard for the building, whatever. The wear and tear on that
It's
building.
like hiring a car, isn't it?
Yeah.
You hire a car for 3
Yeah.
days, you don't worry too much.
The wear and tear is phenomenal. And then, of course, that letting company says, right, well, that building's looking a bit tatty now. We'll leave the residents to pick up the cost
Yeah,
of
we'll
refurb,
do another one.
and we're off to the
Yeah,
next
I
new
agree.
one.
London has
So-
a 90-day per
Yeah.
year limit, so
Yeah.
you can't do your rental in this particular company for more than 90 days.
And that
People are
protects
trying to
the
get
hotels,
round,
of
they
course,
get
as
round
well.
it, they're
But
trying
I
to
mean,
get round it, aren't they?
I
by-
appreciate like they're trying to be clever and create like a unique investment that can make money, but you can't skip the system.
No. Good. Okay. John, your final question.
Yes.
I'm considering entering into an agreement to purchase a small plot of land which currently has full planning consent for 10 apartments. The gross development one will be around about £5 million. Although I have enough cash to purchase the land, I do not have enough resources to build out the project, nor hold on to the stock if sales are slow after completion. Would the panel recommend that I borrow funds, if possible, giving the land as security, or perhaps enter into a joint venture with a builder? My experience of building and developing is fairly minimal, as this is only the second project I've considered.
Well, it sounds to me you shouldn't be doing it in the first place. That's the short.
That's a bit
the short
harsh, John.
answer. The longer answer
Now,
is.
you're usually encouraging people to go.
I'm normally encouraging people, but let's look at the facts. It's their second project ever. It's to build 10 flats. Well, that's not a small project. There's all sorts of challenges involved in this. Yes, they've got the money to purchase the site, which is probably about 20% of the overall value, something like that, the cost of it. So they've got to borrow a lot of money to get it done. Now, is a bank, and I know there's all this crowdfunding now, peer funding and goodness knows what, but is a bank going to lend them the money to develop the project with little experience, even if they own the land cash? I would suggest that a traditional bank, there's no chance. With peer-to-peer lending, I'm sure you guys probably know more
Yeah,
than
I've
I
had
do.
some
I'm sure
experience
they
with that.
would do, and there's some good ones out there. The good ones may question it. The ones who are a bit more ambitious may just think, okay, we'll give them a go. The option, of course, is to find a joint venture partner who's got some experience, and it may be a contractor who's doing the work for you. But it needs to be tied up really carefully with lawyers. Don't just do it on one page of letter agreement. Get it fully covered with a lawyer. The agreement will probably be 30 or 40 pages long. And of course that causes problems before you start, because you're arguing about something that may never be a problem. Because in my always advice is, with these agreements, you put it in the drawer. If you ever have to get it out the drawer, you've got a problem. And there's no winner with joint ventures if they go wrong.
The advantage of the JV, talking in relation to what you said, John, is that the lender that may not have been available to the person who's doing it for the first time would possibly be available because there's a JV who's got a track record, and they could go to their own bank.
They could go to their own bank, and the other thing, it splits the risk. Okay, you're splitting the profit, we split the risk as well.
Let's say they didn't use a joint venture though, and they wanted to raise the funds another way, just so they understand how they're going to be perceived. People want to know, from a lending point of view, if that someone's putting their money up, what is the stickability of you? So if things go wrong and there's obstacles, are you in a position where you're just going to drop tools and say, do you know what, I'm going to put this one as a failure, in which case they'll have lost the lion's share of the money. So that's the reason why they want you to have some skin in the game.
It's a very brave second development.
Okay, great advice there, thank you. Look, that's all we've got time for on today's show, so to Stefano Lucatello, thank you very much for coming in. Thomas Balashev, thank you. And John Howard, once again, thank you
Always
for
a
your
pleasure.
advice.
Thank you.
Join us again next time on Property Question Time.